Welcome into episode 118 of the At the Yard podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Granada High School pitching coach Jason Sekany. Jason, appreciate you making some time to jump on the podcast with us and just share some of your thoughts on the world of college or high school baseball. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, absolutely happy to be here. Excited to get to start talking about the upcoming 2025 season. I know we've been eagerly awaiting the turnover of the new year, and guys are excited and getting ready to roll. I know up here in Northern California, we've been having some cold weather, but certainly excited about getting things going. We don't really get started here with much until we hit that February date, a little different than some other places, but guys are certainly heavy in the preseason prep mode and ready to get rocking and rolling soon.
Yeah, that cold weather is kind of getting us a little bit down here too, and that's just kind of what it's going on here in California in January, right? I mean, but fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your view on it, right, it's dry, so guys can get outside and get some work in. But we wanted to have you on. Obviously, you guys had a magical season last year, 32-1. NCS D1 champs, the NorCal regional D1 champs. I mean, take us through that season. I want, there's some particulars I want to talk about that, but just kind of the overarching, sense you had of that team midway through, like, hey, this could be a magical team, or maybe you guys knew that early. Like, take us through kind of the vibe of going into last season before what we saw unfolded.
Yeah, I think we felt like at the beginning of the season that we had a group with some pretty good potential, though it was a relatively young group in terms of varsity experience. I mean, we were still a team that was basically all juniors and seniors, which isn't young by traditional standards, but from the standpoint of varsity experience, we were really young. We weren't heavy experience. The senior group that we had was smaller. Though we did have, several guys that we had high expectations of in that senior group, and felt like we had some pieces that could really allow us to be a well-rounded club that would give us an opportunity to have some success and make a run in the playoffs. And with the group at the beginning, we really wanted to establish some goals that didn't necessarily include the wins and losses side of it, but really more we took a look at the things that we wanted to accomplish, which were, we knew we were going to go to the Bishop Gorman tournament for spring break. And so we knew we wanted to go into that event that was going to have some good competition with some momentum, and try to go in there and make a good run in that tournament. We wanted to, win our league. We wanted to go into the postseason and have a chance to win the NCS, and then ultimately make it into the state tournament and obviously try to win that as well. So we put these four, time-based kind of chronological goals on the calendar for ourselves, with the idea that we wanted to take one step at a time to try to make that happen. And as we progressed through with that group and took that one day at a time approach, one goal at a time approach, we started to see that those pieces were really coming together. The chemistry with the team was really coming together, and that we had a group that might collectively have an opportunity to, accomplish all of those things. And, fortunately it turned out that way.
Yeah. So when you guys set those goals, was that a result of having that feeling about this group, or was it something like, look, these are our goals annually and it's no different this year?
Well, I guess it's relatively easy to start off, I think, with any season and try to put, those championship goals out there. I would imagine that most programs come in with that kind of optimism, and you need to have that. But I certainly think that, from looking at our rosters in previous years, last year was my 10th year coaching at Granada, and you look at the roster each year and try to be realistic as a coaching staff in particular about the pieces that you have. and try to not limit your team in terms of what they might be able to do, but also maintain some sort of realism with what not setting them up for guaranteed failure, essentially, with no chance to try to really achieve those goals. And I think we felt like, hey, if this group comes together collectively, and with that group, even though those guys were younger, our 2025 group had nothing but success at the younger level. I think they had only lost at the freshman and JV level maybe a total of 3 games in those 2 previous years. So we felt like this is the type of group that does realistically have the chance to be able to achieve those things if we can put the pieces together in the right way. Take
us through the epic battle in the finals for the Division I final there. A 1-0 14-inning game. I believe it was played over 2 days because of darkness. A league rival, right? You guys are
yes.
And it's like third or fourth time you guys are playing for all the marbles. You meet again in the regionals. Take us through that D1 final and just kind of, as a pitching coach, when you had an idea, okay, we might get called to darkness, when did you start looking, okay, tomorrow, what do we have available?
Yeah, well, just as you said, just an epic game. I think we didn't really have it in the back of our mind that there could be a possibility that this game might run into trouble in terms of daylight, other than the fact that it was a 5 o'clock start, which is later than we play any of the games, and knowing that, from the get-go, it was going to be a battle. Obviously, two teams with outstanding pitching, with outstanding defense, with outstanding offense as well. But we all know the cliche about pitching and defense and what it could do to even tremendous offenses. And we certainly saw that materialize in that game. But, I think we had a couple of opportunities later in the game to be able to push a run across and put the game away. And, we didn't do what we needed to do. And De La Salle did exactly what they needed to do, making a couple of great plays. And once we got to that 9th inning, we started to get the sense that, hey, we're running out of daylight here. And at some point there's going to be a decision that's going to be made. But in the midst of the game, you're not really thinking about what are you going to do next, because your thought process is, what do we have to do right now to obviously win this game? And it wasn't until we saw the umpires kind of decide they were going to gather up and, start looking skyward that we went, we're going to have to figure out now, what do we do? Fortunately for us, with the depth that we have from a pitching standpoint, good in some cases and not so good in the others with a high school schedule, we knew we had plenty of arms. And in fact, we knew that based on how our game had gone earlier in the week and the fact that we were able to get Parker Warner out of the game, really early, that he would be available the next day if we needed him. Mm-hmm. And so we had a pretty high level of confidence, knowing that if this game was going to have to carry over, we were going to be bringing back a guy that was going to give us a really good chance to be able to close that game out. So not to mention the fact, once we found out that the game was going to be finished up at home, that was even, further exciting for us.
Well, I bet. Yeah. And so have you ever been a part of anything like that, where a game's called because of darkness in the middle of a game and you got to resume it the next day on the high school level?
No, that was absolutely the first time I'd been a part of a game that was anything like that in just about every respect, and have had a number of people, even come up that I've talked to around the country since, and go, oh man, that game, that was the most epic high school game ever. So, I got to say that, being involved in some pretty crazy games on the international level with Team USA, but from the standpoint of something like that, a 0-0 game with no hitters going deep into the game, there was nothing that I've been a part of that's been like that.
And oh, by the way, it was for a championship.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
you had that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Against, as you said, our arch nemesis, essentially the
Right.
Goliath of Northern California baseball. It was, you couldn't really write it up any better than it went.
Right, exactly. It's the stuff that movies are made of, right? But
Absolutely.
you touched on your international experience, and it's something I wanted to bring up as well. And you've been involved with USA Baseball for a long time, and on a number of different levels. You and I had a chance to talk during our All-American game last September about your recent experience with the 18U team. Take us through that experience and how the kind of you develop your on your coaching side through that you're able to bring back to Granada.
Yeah, well, it's, I have been involved with USA Baseball, for about 16 years, I think now, and have done work anywhere from that 12U all the way to the 18U level. With that 18U level in particular, obviously we're dealing with the best of the best high school players in the country. Similar to obviously what's involved in the All-American game. See a lot of crossover with those players being involved in both of those, super high level events. And it's, I think the USA Baseball experience in dealing with those ultra elite level athletes gives you that tremendous perspective of the old what's out there, what else is out there, who's out there, gives you a little bit better of an idea of where your players are at as a high school program, where they need to strive to be, what kind of adjustments and improvements they need to make to try to move their game to that next level. And then, it also gives us some perspective with respect to some of the programs that we're going to play, what they might have in terms of talent. And so from a coaching standpoint, I think it certainly helps in all of those areas, and maybe gives us a better idea of, where we want to try to get our guys to go, where we want them to, and what may be semi-realistic in terms of what they can accomplish at that age level. What is truly achievable, so that we can go to work on some of those things and try to get them to maximize their own ability in an effort to raise their game to a level that in their mind would hopefully be competitive with those best of the best guys out there.
So you spend, some time during the summer there, you come back the fall to Granada, you come back this year to what is essentially, minus obviously a key piece on the mound, the same team from last year, right? I mean, you guys bring back a whole lot of pieces, seven hitters, you're the depth on the mound. You bring back quite a few pieces, to this year's club. And I mean, the expectations, I got to imagine, are going to be very similar to kind of what they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, it comes back to you take a look on paper and from an experience standpoint at this point, and in theory, we should be an even stronger team. Now, high school baseball is an animal unto itself, as we know, with the power of team chemistry and culture that's created. And there's some of that's obviously the responsibility of the coaching staff and us to be able to manage that and guide that and direct that, but also knowing that, it's something that's built from year to year. And even though we bring back the same or largely the same group, there are some key pieces that are missing, not only from a productivity standpoint, but from that culture. And we have to understand that, yes, we have roles that we have very talented players to fill, but we that give us a lot of confidence in what we should be able to do and what we should be able to accomplish statistically and on paper. But how do we fill the voids that are left, and create the same type of culture and chemistry, within that group? That's probably the bigger task, or at least maybe not the same exact culture and chemistry, but the chemistry and culture that's going to allow this particular group to have that kind of success. And that's what, we spend the fall trying to figure out in our fall baseball class, and obviously the early portion of the spring. as we look to plug some of those guys in to fill those missing roles. The other thing we're going to have is we have a tougher schedule this year, which was on purpose. We kind of feel like our task as coaches is obviously to help these guys win and be successful, but also to challenge them. And we took a look at, and are taking advantage of the notoriety maybe that we collected last year with the success that we've had to really try to put together as rigorous and difficult of a schedule as we could to challenge these guys at every turn in preparation for hopefully another run in the playoffs, but even more so the players' development. And as they go to move on into college, the challenges are going to be even greater.
A few keywords you said there, culture and development. And I'm curious, this always fascinates me when I talk to coaches. What sort of steps do you guys do to develop leadership within your program, right? I mean, is it as simple as pulling a senior aside saying, hey, you're a senior, go lead? I mean, obviously not probably, but what sort of steps do you guys take to develop those leaders inside of your clubhouse?
Yeah, well, I think it's a difficult task. It's a great question, and it's definitely something that kind of grows, I guess, from year to year, depending on and taking a look at the group. We typically seem to have, in my experience, a verbal and nonverbal leader, if you will, in the group. And last year, we had two seniors that really just kind of gravitated to those roles. Parker Warner, who's obviously a big time guy at Stanford now, kind of a team leader. He was a guy that was with us as a freshman for part of the year. Nonverbal though leader, just a lead by example, very professional approach. Methodical about how he goes about his work and just leads by example. And then we had Riley Winchell, who had transitioned in his role. He caught for us as a sophomore and as a junior, moved over to third or first base for us because that's really what the team needed him to do. Very vocal guy, but had the ear of the team. And so those guys really organically kind of filled those roles. And there wasn't much that we had to do as a coaching staff other than communicate with them in terms of what we saw throughout the year. And then they would turn around in their way and lead the team accordingly. And I think this year we're looking at who organically is going to step into those roles and not try to force feed that, not try to ask any particular player to do something beyond their comfort zone and their capability and figure out who really has that lead by example, that quiet leader characteristic, and who's got the ear of the team. And again, let that kind of organically materialize, which we have plenty of guys that can handle that. And obviously those tend to have to be guys that have some experience. And again, we're fortunate this year that we have a lot of those.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you have, 11 guys committed to play collegiate baseball on some level, which is outstanding, right? Especially given today's climate. I would assume that, one, maybe two or several amongst that group would fall in line in that leadership category. But how involved are you with obviously with the pitching and your own son being on this team? I'm sure you were more involved with that, but how involved are you with kind of the recruitment of your players in terms of, helping them get visibility, in terms of answering calls when a coach calls, but being proactive about getting guys recruited? How involved are you guys as a staff and then you personally?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we look at that as being a key part of our responsibility with these guys. I mean, it's going all the way back to the days of being a little league coach. It's, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that these guys want to continue to play baseball and have the opportunity to continue to play baseball and continue to foster their passion for it. And so a big part of that at this level, obviously, is the recruiting side and looking and seeing and understanding where they're going to really have the best opportunity to continue with that, and helping them to not only develop and maximize their potential, but better understand where they fit in that process. And obviously over the course of this last year, that's changed, and it continues to be changing rapidly in terms of the landscape and where there are opportunities for these guys to go, and feather that a little bit with their expectations, and in many cases the expectations of their parents as well, and in an effort to help them find a fit with where they're going to be able to continue to play the game that they've played now for 12 to 13 years, and definitely want to continue to go on. So it's a blend of having some of those conversations with them about where they're at realistically, what they need to do in the classroom, and then beginning to create some of those connections with college coaches, and with anybody else within this community that can help them find the place that they want to go. And many of them don't understand how small of a world it is, how tight some of the connections are. And you and I have had a great experience. We see how that all works and how systematically it works, and that it still ends up being as much about who you know as it is, where and how you're seen, and doing a lot of work in the background to share more information about the character and the makeup of these guys than just what the statistics are that come out when they're at their events and they're out in front of the coaches directly. So there's a lot of it, and I love doing it.
You're somebody who's been around obviously for a while doing this, and you mentioned that we've touched on the international level, and you mentioned something there about player and parent expectations. And how have you seen that change over the course of your time involved with baseball, high school baseball athletes, and is there anything you could maybe put your finger on as to why that's changed seemingly so drastically?
Yeah, well, and it's, having, I guess, been at player development since probably basically almost the start of my own professional career back in the mid 90s, and watching the evolution of, youth into high school baseball, and seeing the invent and advent of travel baseball and year-round baseball, and essentially, I guess to really brief it down, the era of I take my ball and go wherever I want, that the idea of pay to play has really impacted, I think, the parent perspective more than it has the player perspective. I mean, we talk about it all the time with players. When players hit the field, it doesn't take them very long to realistically understand where they're at on the pecking order. The players get it. The players get it more than the parents do. We as parents, and I include myself because I'm a parent of athletes, obviously, have a skewed perspective at varying levels of where our own players are at and what we think our players are capable of. And it's become very easy to shuttle players around and get away from the mentality of I've got to work to advance my place in where I'm at, to I've got to go find somewhere else that's going to make me feel much better about where I'm at. And I think that that's probably the biggest paradigm shift that has created this dynamic of what we see now. And as players and parents transition into high school, where we're in an environment where it's not pay to play, it's more of a meritocracy. It's more of a, hey, the best player is going to get the opportunity, and there are going to have to be guys that play roles that they don't want to be in, that don't have another option necessarily right away to go somewhere else. That becomes pretty difficult for some of the parents to swallow and understand, like, hey, I can't just opt out right now and go write a check to go play for another program that's going to tell me I can be the position in the spot in the order that I want to be in. So that's what I see anyways.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. The whole pay to play element has changed youth sports top to bottom in every sport. But let's get back to this roster you got coming back this year. Jason, you got 5 guys that were active in the lineup last year. A couple of other guys that are going to be mainstays this year had over 70 at bats between the two of them. That's a lot of varsity at bats you got coming back. And so the offense, we touched on it a little bit earlier. It should be, it could be, a good offense just like last year. Let's talk about the pitching staff. Obviously frontline by your son, Jake, 2025 committed to USC, but you have some other intriguing arms, guys that you didn't rely on a whole lot last year that I would expect that you're probably anticipating to take a big step this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's as much as we enjoyed the success that the team had last year and the guys that we had at the front end, that got a fair amount of work. This is one of those spots where I'm going to sound, not a lot of other coaches are going to give me a hard time about this, but we really had a lot of riches in terms of the pitching staff last year, but the complaint on my part was not enough innings to go around. We play in many cases 2 games a week up here in Northern California. And you're talking about 14 innings, maybe to go around. And we carried a pitching staff of 10 guys last year, all of whom had the college caliber stuff, a fair number of them, Division I level stuff. And so really we had a number of guys that were very underutilized, and underexposed when it came to high school baseball. And certainly we're hoping to be able to take further advantage of their skill set this year. We're very excited about a number of them. We had 4 pitchers that were juniors on our JV staff last year that were 85 or north, which is kind of ridiculous certainly for a public school. And all 4 of those guys came up with us with the playoffs last year and will be with us on the staff, which will have another 9 or 10 guys this year. So we're going to be kind of in that same boat. We've got Mason Rivera, who was, from a standpoint last year of a 2025, was probably one of our more underutilized guys. I think he got about 20 innings for us, but he's a D1 caliber arm, another, 88 to 90 mile an hour arm plus up to 92, tremendous stuff. We've got Logan Robinson, who's committed to go to East Bay, who's really got tremendous stuff. He's got a 4-pitch mix with a great strike throwing ability. We've got Alex Piscotti, cousin of Steven Piscotti, who's just an absolute monster on the mound, up to 91. He would be already committed, but he's such a high level academic guy. He's looking at, he's being recruited by MIT. So he's waiting as he goes through some of the academic process to make his decision. But, those are just a few of the guys that we've got, coming back that we're super, super excited about on the mound that I think are really going to give us a chance to be in every game that we play this year.
So you have the offensive side set, you have the defensive side set, and the lineup set. You talked about challenging your guys with a very, very difficult schedule. Take us through that schedule, from your preseason to your league, obviously, and then, any tournaments you might be doing.
Yeah. So we come right out of the gate with SI, St. Ignatius, who is looking really strong. I know they made a really good run late in the season last year. They play in obviously a really difficult league with some of the best schools in Northern California. I think we're going to face a top level guy right out of the gate. Should be a good pitching matchup. I think Archer Horn would likely be the guy that's going to be on the bump against us in that first game. And he's a Stanford commit, a kid that we've seen with USA Baseball for a number of years. So we don't open up and get started with anything soft. We come right out of the gate hot, and continue to play a number of programs. I know we've got College Park on the docket. They're always super strong early in the year. Pitt should be good again. James Logan, who was a very young team that had a phenomenal season last year, that should look to be really strong. I think again this year they're on our schedule. We hit the ground running with De La Salle right out of the gate in league.
Oh, wow.
So it's a strong early season schedule. I mean, even our scrimmage games before we get started, we're going to play a heritage team that's really strong. We're going to play a Clayton Valley charter program that's really strong as well. So there's challenges all over the map early on before we even get into league, which is always a challenge in itself. And then the big challenge, obviously, which is certainly an honor for us, is getting the invite to the NHSI this year, which we're super excited about. I think an honor coming to us based on the year that we had last year and the roster and the team that we've got returning. And obviously with that looking like it's going to be a pretty outstanding field, and knowing that really there's only 4 teams from California that are represented in that event, which is the limit in terms of the number of teams coming from California. We're really excited to be the lone Northern California representative amongst that bunch of super talented California teams that are going to get a chance to go up and go back there and match up against the best.
Yeah, long history of California domination in that tournament. And I think the last team from NorCal, if I'm not mistaken, was College Park, which was a while ago. And then I believe Clovis, if you count them as NorCal, Clovis before them. So you did play Clovis West, so I'm going to throw them in NorCal for you. That's kind of that area, right? That Central Valley. But no, Jason, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some time. I know you're coming back from a long flight, and so I'm really grateful that you were able to make some time to hop on this and share your insights about your program coming up next spring.
Awesome. Really happy to do it. Appreciate it, and appreciate what you guys are doing for high school baseball all over the place out there. This is very cool.
Awesome. Thanks again.